I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Yu-Gi-Oh has another huge problem. And again, I'm going to keep on talking about these problems in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game until they get solved. Last time we made a video like this, Konami actually addressed the issue. Hopefully, they'll do it again. Because of that, I like to think that Konami does watch these videos. So if you guys have anything you want to say, put it down below in the comment section. This is like one of those, what's those things they have at the workplace chat? A survey. There we go. Let's treat it like a survey. I ain't gonna lie, chat. I don't really like doing this, but just to insinuate that there is a huge problem that we all need to talk about. Chat, what's the problem that I'm going to be saying? You guys already know. What's the biggest problem in the game right now? Snake Eye, Tier 0, Snake Eye, Snake. Why is Maxi's not in the TCG, Goofy? You guys said it right. It is a Tier 0 format. Now, I know some competitive players that prefer Tier 0 formats, but those are never good formats for the entirety of the Yu-Gi-Oh player base. And there's a couple of culpable faults for Snake Eyes being so ridiculously powerful. One, I think, was the ban list. Konami legitimately hit Yu-Gi-Oh decks that were powerful, but not overpowered, that could have checked this situation. You guys remember the hits of Unchained? It seemed really awkward because while Unchained was good, we all knew it wasn't the best deck, hands down, undisputably, and could not be checked. This would have been a better format with more decks. Remember when Rika got hit, chat? Rika? Them banned Mathmech Circular, and it's all starting to come full circle. Bring a Rice Hard back? No. I know y'all remember this, chat, like, bro, a lot of head-scratching moves. Some of them that you guys are like, no, that's justified. But at the end of the day, those were good Yu-Gi-Oh decks that have almost completely fell off the face of the earth because of the ban list. You can't do that and then introduce a deck that does so much. And that brings me to the actual problem with Snake Eyes. Those cards do way too much. Every single Snake Eyes Yu-Gi-Oh card does one thing, then another. Oak and Ash not only allow you to gain resources, they set up for their own effects to summon from the deck. Bro, they got like 3 cards that can summon from the deck. 4. Oh my God. Wow. Even the original Sinful Spoils, at first sight, it doesn't seem like a great card because you have to send a face-up card, but its graveyard effect is ridiculous. Yeah, you literally need a full hand trap just to snap Snake Eye. But then you just lose at the point because you have nothing to play. And they still have things themselves. I made a meta counter guide a couple of weeks ago, guys, and that information is 100% correct on how you stop those decks. But the problem with Snake Eyes is that even after you use all of your resources to stop the deck, it has so much text, they can just start all over again or ignore everything that you've done correct. There's literally no punishment for the deck. There's also no counters. Y'all remember in the last format where like Kashtira was countered by Nibiru, Avia's counter that almost every deck can play? You remember Unchained losing to Abyss Dweller? There's not really any cards that Snake Eyes loses to. Can Snake Eyes get floodgated? Oh, you know what? Those floodgates were limited. I'm not sure if that was the thing that we wanted, but it has no counters. I'm just saying, if we needed floodgates to be able to beat Snake Eyes, it's probably something wrong with the Yu-Gi-Oh card game in totality. Even when you play the counter, aka shifter and shifter-like cards, their inboards are still filled with enough resources to play. Yeah, I think, and again, that just goes to the biggest problem with this strategy. Any given time that you do have the exact counters to the deck, because the strategy does so much and it has so many resources and access to so many great Yu-Gi-Oh cards, it kind of just subverts everything with the correct hand. I don't think there's too many Yu-Gi-Oh decks in history that have been able to do what Snake Eyes does. You guys cannot name a singular card that beats the deck. I promise you that. It's just summon limit. See? That brings me to the next point of toxicity. Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten to a point where there is a cycle to be noticed that Konami has not noticed. I have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for 22 years. This is a particular situation that we've seen over and over again. If you remember back in around 2008, there was a trap card called Royal Oppression that didn't seem like a great card. And the biggest reason is because when you flip it face up, you won't be able to special summon anymore. Well, that really doesn't matter if you've already special summoned all of your cards out and then you Royal Oppression your opponent. That card was then banned. Then there was another card called Vanity's Emptiness that would prevent players from summoning. not necessarily good, right? Because it will prevent you from special summoning. Until players realized that they can summon monsters to their field and then use Vanity's emptiness to prevent them from summoning. You guys want to know what summon limit does? Like, Konami, how do you keep falling for the same thing over and over again? You guys got to help me out here. This is just terrible Yu-Gi-Oh card design, and I can go on for that for hours. Yu-Gi-Oh's card design is absolutely putrid because Konami does learn from the mistake, as you can see on the ban list, only to allow a card that is similar and has the exact same effect exist. It's kind of dumb. We can go on and on about how many times and how many examples this has happened, but I actually want to shift on to another thing that Konami actually has done terrible. Hand traps. Because we're in this tier 0 format and we need so many hand traps just to stop an opposing deck, it creates a situation where everybody has to deal with players playing upwards to 18 hand traps inside of their deck. I can tell you one of the worst feelings in Yu-Gi-Oh is to play against a player that activates 3 hand traps against you and then normal summons a card like Snake Eye Ash and proceeds to combo off. Konami tried to make counters to hand traps like Triple Tactics, Talon, and Thrust, but those just become even more mandatory cards you play alongside of your hand traps, and then use hand traps to stop those particular cards. We get into a point where everybody is playing the same 20 plus cards inside of their deck, and then what is Yu-Gi-Oh anymore? I hate to be that guy, but what happened to diversity? What happened to originality? What happened to playing a deck and seeing something cool and be like, yo, that's a different thing we can try? That almost does not exist in this current format. Do I want hand traps gone? No, I want Yu-Gi-Oh fixed. Hi, I returned to Yu-Gi-Oh after 10-ish years and it took me some time to relearn it. During that time, I faced decks like Tier Limits at their peak, and I'd argue that Snake Eyes in comparison is nothing like it. Yes, because it's even more ridiculous. So since the format revolves around Snake Eyes in 1-card combos, and the deck is just infinitely better because it can play all these hand traps, and other decks just can't simply play that many hand traps. Anytime you play against a non-Snake Eyes deck, it is who has the most hand traps. Konami made us go through Tier Limits, Catch Tira, and Snake Eyes. I think we can argue that this is probably some of the worst Yu-Gi-Oh we've ever been in quite some time, maybe all time. We didn't go from Teledad to Dragon Rulers to Firewall hand loops. Those did not happen in 3 separate formats. But it feels like we went from Tier Limit to Catch Tira to now Snake Eyes. 3 strategies that are just a cut way above the rest and creates unfair circumstances, not because of the strategy itself, but all of the counter generic cards that you have to play to keep up, which creates situations that are not fun for everybody else. I've played 3 years and this is the hands down the most unfun format I've been in. My brother in Christ, I've been playing for 22 years and I have to say that this is definitely top 3. And it's not 3. It's probably not even 2. I agree. I will say, even at my locals, players are quitting or players are just not playing Snake Eyes. It's getting to a fact where we kind of have a gentleman's agreement around that. Let's just play some other decks so we can actually have fun. I'm not saying Snake Eyes should be hit to oblivion. I'm saying that the unfair situation that Snake Eyes has caused has made a ripple effect on how we play Yu-Gi-Oh! Even when we're not playing Snake Eyes. But I think to be able to solve the competitive problem, there's going to have to be a massive overhaul in the competitive sphere. I'll talk about it a little bit later in a separate video, but I think Konami needs to aggressively hit the Snake Eyes cards. I also think that Konami should continue to walk back on floodgates and also hit generic extra deck monsters that allow your opponent to make, or players to make, oppressive Yu-Gi-Oh boards. I do think that Konami should release more powerful monsters, and they should be specific to a particular archetype. Raid Raptor, Rising Rebellion, Falcon was a good step. Other strategies need to be able to get cards that help their deck, but also are specific for their deck. Fenrir is egregious. Oh. Actually, personally, I'm gonna push back on Fenrir. I think Fenrir is great card design. I think Fenrir is the cap. Catch Tira Fenrir should be the cap of what a generic card does. It has flaws, it has weaknesses. Barone has no flaws. Like, it just simply doesn't. You negate an opponent's card effect and, oh, I can't negate again. Well, just cycle back into the cards that you summoned it with. It has no flaws. Fenrir has quite the few flaws. Astrolaut is a perfect archetype card because summoning that card, don't get me wrong, when people do it against me, it's like, damn, That sucks. But imagine if it were generic. Imagine if it just said one light monster and one monster with 1500 attack. Like, everybody will play 3 in their deck. Borrowlin Dragon is a good one. Oh, definitely. And that's a generic one, but also like needs its archetype to genuinely succeed. I think we've already talked about these problems before, but they still are a problem that exists in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. So hopefully Konami will see this and make something accordingly. The Yu-Gi-Oh as a tier 0 format is not as fun when there are multiple decks that can compete. Yu-Gi-Oh cards are way too generic, and players are being forced to play multiple of these generic cards just to keep up with the new and popular decks. But that's all what me and chat think about the huge problem in Yu-Gi-Oh. I know that you guys have some. Go ahead and let me know what you think. What are the problems and everything in between? Until then, I'll catch you on the next one.